Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and as you can tell, I have a special guest with me today. Julia, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm from the channel A Reader's World.
Now, today, as you've probably guessed by the title, we are talking about the new Percy Jackson adaptation. A lot of news has come out about it, and obviously, we are big fans, so I figured we should have a quick little video about our thoughts, discussions, our hopes, and terrifying fears. Julia, a lot of people see you as the expert on Percy Jackson fan casting. Fan casting, that has been a little bit of an issue within the fandom recently. Do you have any major thoughts on what exactly we need to avoid when fan casting?
Well, I feel like a fan casting has always been a problem for the Percy Jackson fandom since 2014. I mean, how can we all not forget about if you literally look up Percy Jackson fan casting in Google, you are just taken back in time of the terrible fan castings that people have done. Since there isn't much as diversity as it is in the Percy Jackson series, I feel like we really don't have to worry about it. But it's similar to Heroes Olympus, that if a character's ethnicity, it's their ethnicity. Please don't whitewash. Please don't interchange other ethnicities that are of color. It's just common sense too, which boggles my mind. If a character is an ethnicity, you should keep that ethnicity. I mean, not for people of color. I'm personally fine with changing a character that was white to a person of color. That's my view. So
sort of similar how they did with Grover in the original movies.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I didn't like how they did the characterization of Grover. I mean, it's shown in the Percy Jackson musical, Grover has been played by a person of color both times. So I feel yeah, you can exactly do that. I've seen people complain about that, and I'm like, this isn't a problem. Changing a person that is white to a person of color is not a problem whatsoever. But changing a person of color to a person that is white doesn't work. Or changing, for example, changing a person that might have been black to a person that was Asian or something. It just doesn't work with their character.
Now, because Disney's the one who's doing this adaptation, is there fear that they're going to Disney-fy the people who they cast?
I personally, what I'm more worried about is, I think what a lot of people are worried about, which is the representation of the LGBT plus community. I know that it's not as apparent as in Percy Jackson, but I'm personally worried about that. And when you say Disney-fied, I just want to ask what you personally mean by that. What do you just Disney Channel actors?
A lot of Disney Channel actors, yes, and also they tend to tone down a lot of the things. So if you have someone in a book who is fully African American, they might cast someone who is only half African American.
Oh, colorism!
The fear of
its
queer representation.
I hope not. I mean, if they do that with Charles Beckendorf, I'm fighting. That man, no.
A lot of people forget that he is not white.
Oh my gosh, that just brings me back to seeing that fan cast of Taylor Lautner as him. I'm like, did you guys not get it? And also, the easiest thing that you can do is, look at the official art and just be like, there it is. There's your proof. And then also character descriptions also. Because sometimes people will literally be like, Hazel's not dark-skinned. And then I'll be like, oh, look, textual evidence.
Yeah. Now, of course, everyone's waiting for them to cast the characters as the correct age. Is there any concern with labor laws and stunt doubles and things we need to be worried about when working with children actors?
Personally, I don't know much about the labor laws. But I know that Rick came out and said it's live action, but if we had an animation side of it, we wouldn't be having this problem.
Everyone wants animation.
Yeah, see, exactly. So many problems could be solved with this adaptation if we just did animation. But going into choosing child actors is going to be really hard for them because, number one, they have to be the same age. I mean, the right age. They have to be whatever, or even younger, because what happens when you have actors that are younger, sometimes people think it's the acting side of it, their acting might be a little off, which in some cases, yes, but you also have to think about if you have them for a series, they're going to grow up faster than adults. So I've talked about it a few times with another Percy Jackson fan, but for example, for the It duology is that they did It Chapter 1, and then they did It Chapter 2 like 4 years apart. And in It Chapter 2, they brought back the kid actors, but they had to de-age them. They had to like pitch their voices to make them look like it was the same time period. So that's going to be a huge problem on them. And they already have to deal with so much CGI stuff because it's live action. But that's just going to add more and more to the budget. So by doing something like animation, you could take that away.
Yeah, I really do wish that they chose animation instead of live action.
Or here's the thing I'm thinking. I'm really, really hoping that they take back the live action idea. They're like, ooh, it's too much in our budget. We're just going to go for animation, and just realize the storytelling methods that could work with animation. And I think hopefully, because I heard a lot of Percy Jackson fans are fans of Avatar, and I've started watching Avatar, and I think hopefully with that coming back and people rewatching it will make them realize the popularity and the good work of animation. And I really hope that happens.
Now, talking about the actors, because Disney has access to children actors, especially with their TV shows, would you prefer them to pick someone who is known or have a new actor brought in for this?
Unknown. I want it to be unknown. I feel like with the whole story of being Percy Jackson, of like kids being outsiders and then being new to this world, I would like them to be unknown. It's the same thing like with what they did with Harry Potter, is that they had actors that like never really acted it. Well, I mean, Daniel Radcliffe did act in plays, but he wasn't well known. He wasn't like someone that you would see on Disney Channel and instantly know their name. I feel like you would have to do unknowns. I think the only time that I would be fine with people that are named is if it's adult characters. So like mostly the gods. So yeah.
Yeah, we can get them in to get people. It's like, oh, this actor's in there. That would be the adults. Speaking of the adults, I was actually thinking one of my favorite fan casting that you brought up a while ago when we were talking is that you wanted John Mulaney in as one of the characters, like Paul Blowfish.
Yeah, I did want him for Blowfish for so long, but then people were like, you know Paul Rudd exists, right? And I'm like, oh crap, Paul Rudd does exist. But then people were like, John Mulaney for Blackjack, and I was like, wait, that's genius.
I could see that.
I was like, that's such a great idea. And I've told so many people, any talented artist out there, please do an animation of John Mulaney doing the stand-up comedy routine about the horse, but as Blackjack. Please someone do that. Because that should just be his audition for it. Like that whole skit. So like, for example, when they were doing Toy Story, when it was first happening, they didn't have Tom Hanks like saying Woody's lines. What they would do was animate Woody saying one of Tom Hanks's famous lines, and that's actually how Tom Hanks got into the film for Toy Story. So I feel like if someone were to do that, we got John Mulaney on board as Blackjack. Let's go. Let's start this petition.
Would you want the typo to continue to exist that first implies Blackjack was female before referring to Blackjack as a male?
I did not know that. Oh my gosh.
In the first book Blackjack was introduced, Blackjack was referred to as a female.
Oh my god, wait, I didn't see. You say that like I'm very known in Percy Jackson, but like sometimes some things will pop up and I'm like, I don't even remember that. Oh my god, wait, that's actually.
We could first start introducing queer representation with Blackjack.
Oh wait, okay, then I kind of want someone who is transgender to play Blackjack then, kind of to show that kind of queer representation. Oh my god, I'm so into that now. I never even thought of that. Oh my god, now that my mind is just now amazed by this.
Do you have any specific like ideas the way you want certain things to be represented? Like, of course, Blackjack was my first thought, like that typo like in as queer representation, or do you want it to like include more unique and original stuff that wasn't in the books?
I feel like personally, as a person that really connected with Percy, I really want them to show his struggle and a lot of the demigod struggles, because it's so apparent in the book about what each of the characters go through and kind of what their struggles is to real life kids, and they can relate to that. And that's what really was missing from the movies, is that kind of uniqueness of the Percy Jackson books, is representing young kids that didn't feel belonged or didn't feel like they were represented in like, for example, Harry Potter, because Harry Potter's this chosen one, like he's wanted there, but then for Percy Jackson, no one wants him there. So I feel like that's really important to me to keep that kind of thing. And kind of the whole theme throughout the whole books is there's gray. It's like not everyone's entirely bad or entirely good. Like for like Luke, you can clearly see like, yeah, he has good motives. Like there's like a good sense to what he's trying to say. Just the way that he takes it is just to the extreme, and it's entirely not his fault because Kronos kind of corrupts him in a way. But yeah.
Some of the books can get a little dark with their struggles. Are you like comfortable with the idea of having children actors portray the abuse and the struggles?
That's also why I think it's kind of hard for doing live action. I mean, of course we want those actors to be in comfortable situations where they do feel that they are comfortable with acting, but I still do kind of want that kind of darkness, I guess, on it, because that's what I feel like what made the book so realistic for a lot of kids. Like, even though it's set in mythology and it's set in kind of these fantasy worlds with kooky characters, there's still a kind of darkness to it because it's so lifelike with what the characters go through.
Now, Uncle Rick, as we all call him, has a lot of creative control going into this series. My biggest concern is if he has such a huge connection with writing the script, there is a big difference between writing books and writing TV show scripts. Do you think the dialogue's going to start sounding funny?
See, like, that's a lot of problems that I would have, because like a lot of people are like, Rick should write the script and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, here's the thing with, like, I try to compare one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite books is Perks of Being a Wallflower. The book was written by Steven Chbosky. The movie is written and directed by Steven Chbosky, but that's also because he's a filmmaker. He knows how to adapt stuff from the book that won't work for purposes on film. So for Rick, we have to, like, we do want Rick to have some control because he didn't have any control. But if he takes it in a sort of way too far, it might not work. Like, for example, Star Wars. A lot of people were clowning down on George Lucas like, hey, this isn't working, you shouldn't do this. But when Star Wars became such a huge thing, when the prequels happened, everyone was like saying that he can do no wrong, and then he did do wrong in a lot of cases. I personally don't know, because I don't know his skill set in writing the script. What I've come to the realization is if he just writes the outline and he's assisting someone, I think that'd be really great. Just to have him as like a co-writer or just a person to keep on looking back on and be like, hey, is this correct? Does this work with what your vision of this is going to be?
Speaking of that, actually, are there any things in the book that you think won't be necessary to adapt? Like we can have them cut for the sake of time? Like, obviously, we're going to cut back on Percy's inner dialogue.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be...
can be cut for this.
And I feel like inner dialogue is sometimes used so lazily that, like, we really don't need it. So I'm just trying to think, because there's what I feel with Percy Jackson is that there's a lot of things that seem unnecessary, but when you think about it, they really help with character and storyline. But, like, I think sometimes in Percy Jackson, when they go on certain, like, kind of adventures and the pit stops that they have, I think they can take out some parts of it. The arch is kind of important because Percy, like, kind of goes underwater and realizes stuff. See, like, that kind of stuff, you say something, but then you think about how kind of important it is. But I do feel like some of the pit stops where Grover and Annabeth and Percy go could be taken out. But that's also the earlier books. Like, we're not even talking about, like, the later books that have so much in it. Personally, I'm against taking out stuff that would be essential to character, because I'm very big on understanding character and getting the characters right. So if you take out an event that clearly affects a character, that's not going to help their development.
A lot of people are saying that we should start taking cues from the musical about how they handled time frame. Like, drive over their entire, like, road trip adventure in one song. Do you think that sort of montage would work?
I don't know, because I feel like kind of what I've heard a lot of reviewers say is that what Rick's trying to try to like mirror in Percy Jackson is kind of the way that Greek mythologies go, that every time demigods would get somewhere, they would always be attacked by monsters. And I feel like at some points in those time periods, we do get character. Like, for example, like while they're on the truck away, they get Thalia's story and Annabeth's story. But I mean, I guess in some cases they could have a scene where they are doing a montage, but I don't think that would work for all of the pit stops. I would personally think that the most iconic one, which is Medusa, should kind of stay in there because that kind of connects Percy and Annabeth. From what I remember the musical, it connects Percy and Annabeth kind of together about how Percy like sends it to Poseidon as like kind of an FU to the gods, and I feel like that's kind of important to his character of how he approaches dealing with the gods rather than Luke, who's trying to like kind of get them all out.
Yeah, Percy's very much not subtle about his opinions.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of what might be missing with the voiceover, but I feel like if the Percy actor and the screenwriting is done well, that can very much be approached. So
Now, we know that the TV show is only going to have 5 seasons for 5 books, but once this is over and it gets well reception, will they continue on with like Heroes of Olympus?
see, that's the thing why I feel like animation would work so much better.
Because the characters would age by then.
Yes, because I was talking about this with someone, but like Trials of Apollo, Percy and Annabeth are like 18 years old. So like literally only like 2 years have passed since the end of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And then here's Olympus, like everything starts 6 months later. Like everything is so close with the timeline. And then if they still wanted to do Magnus Chase and Kane Chronicles, like yeah, Kane Chronicles isn't entirely connected with Percy Jackson, but in Magnus Chase, Annabeth and Percy clearly appear. And I believe Ship of Dead takes place around the same time as the end of Trials of Apollo series, from what I've heard. So like that's going to be really hard. You would have to film back to back or change characters' ages because Rick, I think for some reason, I think he wants to keep Percy 17 or like 18 for a while. So like that's going to be really hard to do because by the end of the 5th series, like the actors are already going to be older than the characters. So
Rick has talked a lot about how he wants to keep his books middle grade, but yet he continues to age up his characters. So once they reach the age of 18, it's going to be weird for it to have an 18-year-old in a middle grade book, which again will continue on with the TV shows and the actors.
Yeah, and like just having those aged actors with those kinds of like kind of not childish, but like kind of yeah, I guess kind of middle grade and stuff like that. Personally, I consider Heroes of Olympus kind of YA, but not really. So I totally get where you're coming from, especially with Magnus Chase and Kane Chronicles, and I'm sure he's going to do the Celtic series with middle grade. So
again, once this goes well and we complete this series, do you think it would be better to move directly on to Magnus Chase, or would you prefer a break with like the Kane Chronicles and some other stuff?
I think it's because I feel like Heroes of Olympus. Oh, are you talking about connecting Percy Jackson right to Magnus Chase, or like after Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus?
I would assume that Heroes of Olympus would have to come directly after.
Yeah,
so
that's what I feel like.
That stuff, would it be like, would you be okay with them continuing on with other series?
I would be personally fine with that. Personally, I would like to start with Kane Chronicles because I feel like Kane Chronicles is so unrepresented, and I feel like that's a really good series. And also, what you could do is, I think Kane Chronicles happens around the same time as Heroes of Olympus. I might be wrong, but I think that'd be kind of cool to show that they're all both going on at the same time. Because not only did like Kane Chronicles like not have any of the heroes of none of the characters, you can still see that these major things are happening around the same time, and the whole kind of mythology worlds kind of colliding.
From what I remember of the first Kane Chronicles book, because it's been a while since I've read it, but in book 1, I believe Sadie she approaches the balcony that overlooks Manhattan. And she talks about how, she sees figures moving there. It looks like a battle off in the distance.
Yeah. So I would so be in, I would like be into like kind of the subtle hints that they are around the same world. Personally, I would not, since the books don't have Percy in it, but I know the side stories do. I feel like having a book series that doesn't have specifically them in it would kind of give the audience kind of a break from them and realizing that there's other worlds, there's other characters, and there's other different characters. And then kind of going into Magnus Chase, kind of like they're still there, but they're not as important as the main key characters that are in that story.
They show up to give magnets a boat. That's their...
Yeah, that's their only instant. They're like, here's a boat. Enjoy.
I do believe that's kind of all I had directly I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that you want to bring up, like that you just have concerns, or anything you just want to add to the conversation?
I just really hope they change with the animation. I'm just really, really hoping for that. I think it's because, like, I think live people so much over the time look over animation, and I feel really, really sad about that, because I feel like the series could do so well in animation, and all the problems that live action could have could be solved with that. And I just want this series to succeed as much as the next person. So, because I know the musical exists. Like, the musical is a great adaptation. It's done well. Like, it's fueled us all to keep kind of our love for Percy Jackson, but this is going to be seen on screen. This is going to be seen by a large majority of audiences that haven't even read Percy Jackson. And we kind of want to steer away from what happened with the movie. So to kind of change how people look at the movie, you kind of have to do it in a different format and make it different. And I feel like animation would be the way to go. So yeah, I'm still holding on for animation, but I don't think it's going to happen. So
do you think the monsters are going to end up being entirely CGI, or would you prefer actors? Or
I feel like Mandalorian, which is Disney Plus's Star Wars series, does beautifully with mixing CGI and practical effects. So I feel like that would be really cool to do puppets, but like put CGI over it, probably, because that's what they did with Jurassic Park when it first came out. So like, that's what I'm worried about also, is the monsters could look really bad or really good, and that's all because of budget reasons. So yeah.
But it has a good budget.
Yeah, Disney, come on, you gotta give us literally Disney needs to see Percy Jackson trending on Twitter and be like, okay, we need to put a lot of money into this. Because
it's funny because when the news first broke, I believe you were on the Zoom call that we were having with the Discord, and we were all just automatically jumping to, it's going to have its own Disney park, and we're going to have...
I know!
We all just jumped to hoping people loved it with a good budget.
Yeah, because, like, the movies, like, everyone, like, from what I've heard or seen, people that have seen the movies, like, they think they're okay, but there's nothing too distant or unique about them for people to be like, oh, this is my favorite movie series. But like for Percy Jackson, like if they're really close to the books, I feel like people would like them even more because there's a uniqueness to them that was missing from the movie, because they wanted to be like Harry Potter and Twilight and Hunger Games all in one, which is Percy Jackson's definitely not.
It's not a YA, it's a middle grade, please.
Yeah. We gotta hone up to the teens, but the teens are reading Percy Jackson, so like, do you really need to?
So that's kind of it. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Again, all of Julia's handles will be down in the description below. If you want to add to this conversation, I'm always down in the comments reading. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.